What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. This time it's captaincy ahead of Game Week 19. The big one, double Game Week captaincy. Obviously, in every single Game Week, you want to nail the captaincy, but hitting the highest point scorer in your team on a double Game Week is huge. So we're going to go through some of the main candidates and then look at some of the other matches as well. For some of you that want to maybe take a punt, I think for the most part in a double Game Week, I always try and captain a double Game Week player. And this week, I think it's very difficult to go single Game Week just because of the big key hitters that are both doubling. I'll really quickly touch on before we jump into the matchups about the triple captaincy. Obviously, it's completely up to you if you use it. In my eyes, 15 plus for captaincy is decent. So if you can see a player in your team that you genuinely think can get 15 plus points this week, I don't think that's a bad triple captaincy. In terms of whether you should do that or bench boost, that's going to depend on individual teams. I do think for each player we're going to talk about, especially the big kind of key players that people are looking at, there are kind of reasons you might not want to triple captain them this week. And I will say there are going to be more double game weeks down the line where you can use that chip. So it's not an absolute necessity to use it this week, but I do still think it's quite a good week to do it. So if you're teetering on the edge of doing it or not, hopefully this video will help you, but try not to overthink it too much. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, I've got the Game Week preview video that I recorded earlier this week. Otherwise, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into the captaincy. We'll start off with Man City now. I've changed around the format of how the numbers are displayed on screen slightly, right? Obviously, they're playing two games, so I haven't done their matchup. It's just Man City versus Crystal Palace at home, Aston Villa at home. I've got 4 players on for Man City, although realistically, the only option most of us are looking at is Kevin De Bruyne. I think outside of that, you're looking into punt territory. Raheem Sterling, obviously, in our bad books for missing that penalty, especially if you owned him, right? Coming off the bench and then getting minus points for missing a penalty is not good at all. And obviously, with all of these players outside of De Bruyne, we're not even sure if they're definitely going to play. And I should say, I'm recording this before press conferences, so we might get some further news before then. And obviously take that into account. If a player's not going to play, they're not a good captain, etc. Gundogan, I think, is a decent enough option because I think he will start. But look, differential captains are good. For those of you that watch my videos for a long time, you know I'm not a big fan of them. One of my kind of rules before the start of this season was to not take punts on my captaincy because it is such a massive factor for your game week, right? It can turn a good game week into a great one or a rubbish one into an okay one. So you don't want to get the captaincy wrong. And I think when there's so many good big hitters this week, like De Bruyne, Fernando, Salah, etc., not to mention any other players as well, going for a differential just adds more risk. And I'm not trying to put people off doing it, right? You should absolutely do it if you want to. It's your team. Play the game however you want. But going for a different Man City player outside of De Bruyne is tricky. I don't even have Foden listed here, and obviously he did really well in the last game against Brighton, got the only goal. He's also their top scorer for the whole season, not in the league, but overall in all competitions, which is absolutely mad. I know Man City have been without a number 9 for a while, but I do think all the other options you see on screen, De Bruyne is the main one. Look at that expected goal involvement, and by the way, that is without penalties, right? And I know he didn't take that one, but that's non-penalty expected goal involvement. 3.3 over 4 weeks is massive. I looked on FBref. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. Is it FBref, I guess? And De Bruyne's expected goal involvement per 90 minutes is 0.81. That's absolutely crazy, right? It's higher than all, or at least most of the midfielders that I checked, Fernando, Salah, Grealish, etc. So he's doing really well, and he's probably been unlucky not to get more points. The main worry with him is tiredness, right? Pep said that he didn't take the penalty because he was tired. He looks knackered in games, although I will say he often looks knackered, but yet he's continually driving forward, getting into the box. So I'm not sure I'm too worried about that, but I would keep a close eye or a close listen, close ear on what Pep says in the press conference. If he makes any kind of point towards him needing a rest or the fact he's going to rest him soon, that might put me off captaining him, right? So we need to listen out for that. Bearing in mind that in December, Pep said that he couldn't rest De Bruyne because he was too integral to the team. And given that the league is so tight, I'm not convinced that he will get rested. I think there's enough rest in between the next 2 games. And then the time to rest him will be in the FA Cup. So that will give him a 7-day break after the Villa game to then play the next game in the league, which is West Brom. These are all winnable games. You get a bunch of points on the board. You put pressure on Man United. You put pressure on Liverpool. It's good. So I don't think De Bruyne will be rested for either of these. I think maybe his minutes will get managed, right? If they're 2 or 3 up against Palace, he'll get brought off. And I think that would have happened against Brighton. Obviously, they only went 1-0 up. So that's in terms of who the best option is. I think we all know it's De Bruyne. It's just that slight worry of a rest in one of the games potentially. In terms of the matchup, so he's playing Crystal Palace, who defensively haven't been good all season. Remember I mentioned this for the Liverpool game, right, where we talked about captaining Salah and then he got benched, but then he came on and absolutely smashed it. Crystal Palace is the same team that conceded 3 to an Aston Villa team that were down to 10 men as well. And interestingly, I'm sure if you go and ask a lot of people, they'll say, well, Mitchell's in the team now. They're looking better defensively, didn't concede to Arsenal. But over the last 4 matches, the numbers have actually gotten slightly worse. And I looked at who they've played in the last 4. So it's West Ham, Liverpool, Villa, Leicester. Arsenal, Sheffield United, Leicester, Villa it is, sorry. So Arsenal they did well against. Sheffield United don't really score too many anyway. Leicester and Villa, fair enough, right? So they've done pretty bad, but they've played some pretty good teams, but that would tell me, well, they're about to play another good team. They're probably going to do well against them as well. So I can't imagine they get a clean sheet against Man City. It's not the same as playing Arsenal. Arsenal heavily missed Tierney last night. So I think this looks like a really good matchup. Now, playing Aston Villa is not quite so easy. Their defence has been quite good this season. The thing with them is we haven't seen them play for a couple of weeks now, because obviously all the COVID situation. We think this match will be on. I should probably address that. The fact that Villa have had a rearranged match for Newcastle in Game Week 19 makes me think they're going to play Man City. It would have to be something pretty big now for them to miss that game. I'm much less concerned about that as I am as a potential rest for De Bruyne, put it that way. So it is a tricky time to play Villa. The only kind of good thing for Man City is Villa haven't played for a while. They haven't been training properly. I know they've been training at home, but it's not the same as getting to the ground or obviously getting to the training ground and training properly with the rest of the team. So that's a big factor. We don't know who's going to be available for that game either. Are there going to be players still trying to get over COVID? Because it's all well and good saying, well, they've had enough time to kind of have it and get over it. But some players get more affected by it than others. Same with people, right? So I think this is a good matchup. For me, if all things were equal in terms of minutes, fitness and stuff like that, I think De Bruyne is the standout captain this week. But obviously, with the factors I mentioned, let's listen to what Pep says. There might be better options. I think the 2 fixtures are pretty good. Crystal Palace is definitely better than Villa. But overall, as a 2-game, to the 2 games in the game week, I think they're better than the other big hitters that we're going to talk about. So De Bruyne are decent, but let's look at the other ones. So Liverpool have kind of not as many worries over fitness and stuff like that because they haven't been playing, right? Yes, some of the players got a bit of a run out against Villa's under 23s, but they didn't have to exert a huge amount of energy, right? Salah got on the score sheet. He didn't have to do a huge amount of running, no tracking back or anything like that. It was an easy game for Liverpool in the end, although they didn't make it easy work of it in the first half. But they're going to be fine. Then they've had a long rest until they play again. And obviously, some of the players didn't play in that game, so they've had a big rest. So overall, as a team, it's a decent rest before Man United, and that game is now huge, because if they win it, then suddenly they're back to the top of the league. If they don't, Man United are top, and they've had to play Liverpool already, and suddenly they're laughing. So it's a huge game for Liverpool. They're obviously going to be right up for it, and they've had a good rest, whereas Man United haven't, right? They did rest some players in the FA Cup. Rashford and Martial came on, so they've not had as much of a rest as Liverpool boys. I don't know if that will really make too much difference. For a big game like this, you don't think that tired legs or anything like that will be the deciding factor. But it is a key consideration for the likes of Salah, Mane, etc. because obviously they got that second game against Burnley as well. In terms of the defensive numbers, Man United are getting slightly better in terms of expected goals conceded as they go on. So this is on a per game basis. So for the season it's 1.28, which isn't fantastic, but then it's 1.16 in the last 6 and 0.93 in the last 4. Now, Man United's last 4 matches were Burnley, Villa, Wolves, Leicester. So Wolves and Burnley, not the most attacking. Leicester and Villa pretty good. And even before that, it was Leeds and Sheffield United. So they've had some good attacking teams and some poor attacking teams. So the numbers have got better. Obviously, playing Liverpool is a different kind of kettle of fish altogether because they're a difficult team. But I think the fact that Bailly is in is going to be huge. And I think he'll play again. I just think he covers Maguire so well compared to Lindelof. Lindelof did come straight back in against Man City when he was fit. But I think if Bailly's fit, he's going to play. And I think that would be better for Man United overall from a defensive point of view. And then, of course, like one of the reasons it's difficult to judge it on a match by match is they don't always play the same lineup. Like against Burnley, there was no McTominay and Fred. That will definitely be the lineup against Liverpool. I'd be very surprised if it's not. So that adds a bit more defensive stability. And I think the Man United game is quite tough. I think it's very hard to call. I think if you're going into that match thinking Salah can get like 2 or 3 goals, then he's going to do the same against Burnley. I think you're going to be probably heartbroken by the time Game Week 19 finishes. I think Man United will be low scoring, then you're hoping for goals from Burnley. Now, in the last captaincy video, what did I say about Man United versus Burnley? If they can get an early goal, there could be lots of goals in it. And Man United did create quite a few good chances. Martial and Cavani in particular should have scored goals in that game. So it could have been 2-3, 4-0. But Burnley do as Burnley do. They defended well. They defended organised. They cleared plenty of chances that came Man United's way. And they kept it to a boring 1-0. So that's the only thing that really puts me off Salah or Mane captain. Like if you look at the numbers, Mane is performing better than Salah recently. He has been for a lot of the season. Even Firmino is as well. But we know what Salah can do, and obviously he's on penalties too. So he would be my number one. Mane close behind though. So if you own Mane instead of Salah, I think he's a good option this week. But the two games, Man United could be low scoring. Burnley could be low scoring. But Salah could get goals in both. Suddenly he's on 7 points before bonus in both games. That's 14 plus points before he gets any assists or anything like that. So we know how quickly he can top his points up. So I like Salah as an option. Again, all things equal, I think De Bruyne is better. But Salah has had more of a rest. Right? We've heard Pep say that De Bruyne was tired, etc. So I think this is good, right? 2 home games, you'd always back Mo Salah. I don't think they're going to be particularly high scoring, but that doesn't mean he's a bad captain option, right? If he comes out with 7 or 8 points from both games, that's 16 plus, and suddenly he's looking decent, right? So I like Salah, I like Mane. I just worry about how these games will play out. If we saw another 1-0 to Liverpool against Burnley, would we be completely surprised? No. Same for Man United? No. And arguably, you want a game where you can get more than that to get that big score. But I think Salah is decent. I think there's some factors to consider, either pros and cons. Obviously, pros is the rest. He's a great player, of course, but cons is the games could be low scoring. So you have to think about that and then decide from there. So I said at the start there was potentially reasons why you might not want to triple captain, right? If you were worried about a De Bruyne rest or Salah having 2 tricky games, I think Fernandes is in the same boat. I really don't think you can triple captain Fernandes this week. I just think there's too many slight worries over him. What I will say is, if you take those factors out, maybe he is a decent captain, decent triple captaincy, but I'll talk about why that's potentially an issue. First of all, he has got the same kind of problems as Salah in that he's playing 2 difficult fixtures. For Salah, I think Man United is tough. For Fernandes, Liverpool is even more tough. And I keep seeing that Liverpool are not the same defence. They're a weak defence now. Yes, of course, you take Van Dijk out, that weakens the defence. But they're still a really great team. And what you have to remember is that a good defensive team is not necessarily just because of the defence, right? It's how the team play. How much do they keep the ball? That's one of the reasons Man City is so good. Yes, they've got good defenders who will cover well when the ball comes through to them, but they have a team that keeps the ball and attacks so much. It doesn't let the opposition attack themselves. And it's similar for Liverpool. So you take Van Dijk out, they're still they're a weaker team, but they're still a great defence. They're probably still top 2 or 3 defence in the whole league. Look at it over the season, right? Expected goals conceded 1.08. That's really good. And considering they lost Van Dijk so early on, that's decent. Over the last 6 and 4, it's improved even more. Now, the fixtures they've played have not been that difficult. Last 4 is Southampton, Newcastle, West Brom, and Palace. And even before that, if you look at last 6, you include Spurs and Fulham. So they haven't had the toughest run of games. And Man United will give them more of a game than most of those teams. But the defence is still good. Man United are going to struggle to score. If I had to guess how this game would go, I would say 1-0, 1-0, or 2-1 or something like that. I know that's obviously 3 different guesses, but I just don't see it being a high-scoring game unless there's loads of mistakes. And both teams are playing really well. So straight away, that would put me off a Man United attacker. You could say, well, they've got Fulham. That's a good game, better than Burnley. But I don't know if it is. You look at the stats, okay, they've not been great, but they have got slightly better over the last 4. Again, Fulham have played Spurs, Southampton, Newcastle, Brighton. So not the best teams, but Southampton attackers, people keep telling me how good they are. Brighton attack isn't bad either. Newcastle, okay, we can write them off. And Spurs did pretty well against Fulham too. So there are chances to get a goal. I think with the Burnley game for Liverpool and with the Fulham game for United, you need that early goal. I know it's cliche, but if you don't get that and you start struggling to break the team down, the defensive team, so Fulham in this case or Burnley for Liverpool, they suddenly get a bit of a boost confidence-wise. We can do this. We just have to stay organised, stay in our lines, etc. And it gets difficult. So I don't mind a Fernandes captain or a Man United captain here. I think if you look at the stats, Fernandes is still standing out. He's creating so many chances, but also, more importantly, having a similar amount of shots in the box to Rashford, to Martial, and even to Cavani over the last 4. Cavani has played a few less minutes than the rest of them, and obviously with Martial and Cavani, there's a potential for them to share minutes. I'd say Fernandes and Rashford are more nailed on, but they're just, I think that's what's so good about this game week is there isn't an obvious choice. There's choices that are good for some reasons and bad for others. And for me, Fernandes comes behind Salah and De Bruyne. I think De Bruyne's got the better fixtures and the better numbers. And Salah is similar to Fernandes at the moment, I think. But I think Salah's got slightly better fixtures, being at home, etc. More of a goal threat than Fernandes. He's the one I'd go for. So out of all the big hitters, I'd put Fernandes third. But let me know in the comments below if you disagree with that. So looking at some of the other matches, I should just quickly touch on that Man United-Liverpool game again. Obviously, I expect Liverpool to cause the Man United defence some problems. I do wonder if Rashford will get put back on the left with Martial through the middle if he's fit. Otherwise, it'll be Cavani. Because Rashford up against Trent could be decent. So if you've got Rashford and not Fernandes, he could be an outside captaincy pump. But I thought for this video, because most people are going to be looking between De Bruyne, Salah and Fernandes, I talk mostly about those three and their matches. So De Bruyne number 1, Salah number 2 and Fernandes number 3, unless Pep says something crazy in his press conference. Looking at the other games, so the image on the left is the first round of games. The image on the right is the second. So that's obviously the teams that have got a double game week. In terms of single game weekers, like in any other game week where maybe Salah, Fernandes, De Bruyne don't have double game weeks and it's, I don't know, maybe Aston Villa have a double game week and that's about it, right? And so you've got Grealish captain in a double versus Kane and Son against Sheffield United in a single. Maybe there'll be more of a conversation, but yes, I think Spurs will probably do quite well against Sheffield United. I think it'll be low scoring. I don't see Spurs scoring more than 2, to be honest. But obviously Son and Kane could be involved with both. And if they are, that's going to be a double-digit haul plus, probably, which is decent. But you're surely going to bet on the double game week when there's so many big teams playing. So I think single game weekers, I'm just ruling out completely. In terms of double game weekers, again, if the Aston Villa situation was different, I think you could put in a case for Grealish. His numbers are so good. Yes, he's playing Man City, but Newcastle is a good fixture. So I do like Jack Grealish as an outside punt. I've mentioned before about Chelsea players, so Werner, Pulisic. Again, this is punt territory because Leicester is a difficult fixture. And obviously their other game as well, it's Fulham. And we've just talked about how that could be a tough one for Man United. So it could be tough for Chelsea again. I think Chelsea got enough about them to, now that Ziyech is back, etc., to get maybe nick an early goal or just apply so much pressure on Fulham they can get through that defence. But there has been some improvement recently. So going for Werner or Pulisic, for me, they're the kind of players where I'd just be happy to have them in my team rather than going the extra step to captain them, because already going against like one of De Bruyne, Salah or Fernandes is tricky enough, but to go against them as captains as well and go for Chelsea, that's a really brave move. Now if that pays off, it's huge. If it doesn't, then you could see a big rank drop. And I wouldn't like advise playing with fear of rank drops and stuff. If you genuinely think that Chelsea players are the best, then go for it. But if you're one of those people that's like, I'll just captain them, it's something different, I think you need to give it a bit more thought. So Chelsea captaincy good, or different good, I guess. The other one is Antonio. The main problem is there's only 2 days between their games. So they play Burnley 3 o'clock on Saturday the 16th, then they have the 17th and 18th off, and then they play on the 19th, right? We've already seen reports of this new striker coming through the ranks, young guy that might get some minutes, might even make his debut this weekend. It doesn't mean he's going to start. And I think Antonio offers so much. And I know people said he didn't look great in the FA Cup, but that was his first game back at 90 minutes. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on them. I think he's a really good player. And I think he would be, outside of the main 3 players and teams I talked about, I think, again, all things being equal, if he's fit enough to play good minutes, like 70 to 80 minutes in both games, I think Antonio is arguably the next best captain. You could go to Jamie Vardy, who's got Chelsea and Southampton. Again, I think that's 2 tough games. Pulisic, Werner, who I've mentioned. But I'm going to put it on the line and say that outside of Fernandes, De Bruyne and Salah, and obviously Mane and whoever else plays good minutes in both those games, so Rashford for Man United, Sterling, Foden potentially for Man City, I think Antonio, because of the fixtures, West Brom, like we've just seen Arsenal struggle to score against. Arsenal only scored 1 goal versus Brighton and Palace, but yet they put 4 past West Brom. West Brom are a bad team, therefore I like Antonio. And Burnley, if you can nick something in that and then get a good return against West Brom, I think he's a good captain. There are obvious risks with him when it comes to injury record, how many minutes he's going to be able to play, will he be able to start both games in quick succession, but you're only paying 6.2, so the risk isn't really there with the amount of money. Obviously, with the captain, there's more of an added risk. But I do like him. You know I do. He's now hopefully fit. Hopefully Moyes, by the time I've recorded this, doesn't go and say he's a bad option now or he's not going to play. But I like him. So I think Vardy, Pulisic, Werner and Antonio if I was going out of the 3 main matches that I've talked about. There we go. That is captaincy for Game Week 19. Let me know in the comments below who you are captaining this week. One thing I forgot to mention with Fernando, by the way, he's on 4 yellow cards. So if he gets one against Liverpool, he then misses the next game. So that's another thing to chalk off kind of against him. So I'm definitely going for De Bruyne or Salah. Right now it's on De Bruyne. The only thing that would probably make me change that is Pep saying something, and I might switch to Salah, but I'm not going anywhere else. I just like owning Antonio. It's probably a little bit too much for me to captain him, but let me know below who you're going for. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I'll be back tomorrow with a deadline stream around 10:15 a.m. in the morning. Hopefully you've enjoyed all the content this week. If you have, make sure to check out Patreon if you want to support me and the channel a little bit further. There's early team reveals over there. All the videos are converted to podcasts. There's a Slack community which is great and growing. We've got over 200 members on Patreon now as well. So thank you to everyone that signed up. And Ollie K, Kashif S, and Ross M. Thank you for signing up since the last video and for all your support. Please do continue giving these videos a like, hitting that subscribe button. It's really helping me out. I've loved what's happened with the channel so far this season. Let's keep it growing to the end of this season, taking it into the next one as well. Good luck with the captaincy. Good luck with Game Week 19. I'll catch you tomorrow for a deadline stream. Until then, I'll see you soon.